You're listening to Simply the Best Sports Take, the best podcast breaking down the best stuff in sports with host Sean Bingham. His takes are so good, he dropped the mic, but then you wouldn't be able to hear him, and that would suck.
Welcome into STB Sports Take, Simply the Best Sports Podcast. I am your host, Sean Bingham. Thank you for being here. We are on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Anchor Podcasts. Everywhere you get your podcasts, we are there. Please hit that subscribe button. I'm just realizing now the fan is on, so I'm going to silence that in case you heard a little noise. Thank you for being here. Please hit the subscribe button. It's been a couple weeks since my last podcast. Things do slow down in the world of sports in the month of August. I also had a birthday in the month of August, just about, in fact, exactly 1 week ago today. I turned 41. Happy birthday to me. I'm accepting gifts year-round, so if you have anything, feel free to send it. The best gift you can give me, though, true story, the best gift you can give me is to subscribe to the podcast and share it with a friend. We've got some fun stuff to talk about today, even though the typical sports like football and basketball are not really... football's getting close, but it's not quite here yet. We're going to start, though, with the UFC. UFC had its biggest fight of the last several months here in Utah, in Salt Lake City. I was lucky enough to go to the fight. I had a wedding that night for a close friend of mine. He's actually a somewhat loyal listener. We'll see if he hears this. He's on his honeymoon, so he probably won't get this. But Skylar, shout out to you. Congrats on the wedding, my man. I had his wedding downtown in Salt Lake City at the Capitol building, and then just a few blocks away was the fight. And I was able to get there just in time for the main card, right? So I see all the preliminary fights of the main card, and then we get to the main event. And just being there, the atmosphere was electric. Hearing Bruce Buffer do his introduction was like so freaking cool. That alone was worth the price of admission. I'm not even joking. Like, to hear him, he's so good at it. It's crazy how good he is at it. And the guy's worth every penny he's getting. I don't know how much he's getting. I could Google it real quick, but I'm sure it's millions. In fact, I'm going to Google it while I'm sitting here doing the podcast. How much money does Bruce Buffer make per fight? That's a suggested search. He typically is paid $50,000 per fight. He can make up to $100,000 for larger events. That's a pretty good gig. So say he got 75 grand, maybe he averages 75 grand, we'll call it, per fight. That's pretty awesome. So maybe it's not millions, but that's pretty freaking awesome. And I'm sure he does other things. But anyway, it was so fun to watch him do his thing. So then, obviously, on to the more important stuff, the actual fight itself. Kamaru Usman is, I would say he lost the first round. I would say for sure he lost the first round to Leon Edwards. And then the second round, he wins. The third round, he wins. The fourth round, he wins. And so he's clearly won the fight. And now we're down, and he's even winning the fifth round. And we're down to the final minute of the fifth round, the final round. There's 5 rounds in championship fights, 3 rounds in all of other fights, right? This is a championship fight. It's for the welterweight championship of the world. Kamaru Usman is the favorite. He's won now essentially 4 of the 5 rounds, meaning he's winning the 5th at the time, because he did lose the first round. There's less than 1 minute to go in the entire fight. The only chance that Leon Edwards has is a knockout. It's the only chance he has. And I say to my buddy Luke, who I was sitting with, we had great seats, by the way. We're on row 12. Bought them just like an hour or two before the main card started. A sellout crowd, but there's obviously tickets available on Ticketmaster. So we get tickets. It was only $300, $295 actually to be exact. And we're only 12 rows up. We had fantastic seats, like an excellent vantage point. It was so awesome. I'm so glad I went. I was really debating it, and I'm so freaking glad I went. Anyway, so I turned to Luke. I'm like, dude, this has actually kind of been the most uneventful fight of the night. I remember at one point actually getting a little bit sleepy, okay? It had been a long day. I was tired. I didn't fall asleep. Don't get me wrong. I didn't fall asleep. But I remember thinking, like, this is so uneventful. I'm, like, actually a little bit tired sitting here. And Luke says, yeah, the only chance he has is a knockout. And, Usman is, like, keeping his distance at this point. He knows he's got 55 seconds, a minute until he's retains his title, right? He keeps the belt. And just like that, Edwards goes in with kind of a fake left jab. It was so cool watching in slow-mo replay. He goes in for the left jab, but you can tell his plan all along is, I'm not actually throwing this punch. I'm making him look at this, pay attention to this. Hey, look what I got over here. Woo. And then boom, smacks him with the left leg. knockout kick. I mean, it was instant on impact. Usman just buckled, eyes back of his head. His eyes are open, but nobody's home. Lights are out. It's all dark in there. Unbelievable come from behind win. He had zero shot of winning that fight without a knockout, and he does it with 55 seconds remaining. Or 56, I think it was. Unbelievable. The crowd goes wild. I mean, so Usman's one of my favorite fighters. I love greatness, and I'm not like some diehard UFC guy. I like it, but I just really follow the top fights. And he's the best fighter in the world right now, in my opinion, pound for pound. And so I like him, but at the same time, I remember I said to my buddies who I went with, I said, honestly, I'm not like some Usman fan. Like, I think he's fun to watch, but like, I would love to witness him get dethroned. Like, why would we not want that? That'd be fantastic. And that's exactly what we got. And we got it in like record-breaking fashion. We got it in like news-breaking, fashion. It's already being talked about as one of the greatest come-from-behind knockouts in the history of UFC, one of the greatest kick knockouts in the history of UFC. I got to be there. It was so awesome. So if UFC, they're going to come back to Utah. The place was sold out. The place was like magnetic and electric the whole night. It was loud. It was exciting. And they've talked already about coming back. So it was just cool to see that stuff happening here in Utah. I was glad to be a part of it. Glad to see a changing of the guard, someone get dethroned and a new champion be crowned. And so congrats to Leon Edwards, a fantastic knockout. What a spectacular fight. And fun fact about this, Drake apparently bet $200K on Kamaru Usman and, of course, lost that. And so I guess Leon Edwards was clowning him, making fun of Drake for not betting on Edwards, but instead betting against him. And he must have said in his little victory speech there at the end of the interview, look at me now. He must have said it 35 times. I don't even know, but it was a lot. But we're all looking at you now, Leon Edwards. Let's see if you can defend that title, because that's where it gets difficult. Defending that title, defending that belt, that is extremely hard to do in UFC. This would have been Usman's 16th straight victory in UFC, which would have tied Anderson Silva's record. He does fall just short of that. And I'm sure we're going to get a rematch. I can't imagine we wouldn't. And I'm excited for it. And I hope it's back in Utah. We'll see. But I would expect to see UFC travel more, because all they're doing is getting more and more fans. I don't know why they would stick to just Vegas or Fight Island, like they did in Abu Dhabi or wherever it was. Like, there's no need for that. They definitely should be traveling. This should be a traveling event, because casual fans like myself are now much more diehard fans. It's kind of like when a band travels. You just collect more fans. You're collecting more and more fans. That's what UFC should do, because there's no such thing as like home court advantage like there is in sports. And so there's no like venues that these individual fighters own. So UFC just kind of goes from venue to venue. I think they need to quit it with the Vegas Always thing. I think it needs to be all over the place. Why not? Just keep traveling, collecting more fans, increasing your sport. It's so much more exciting than boxing. I don't understand how boxing still has bigger payouts by a long shot. I don't get it, because UFC is so much better. But anyway, so that was amazing. The fight before that, by the way, I got to mention here, the fight before that was Luke Rockhold, and he lost a decision to, what was the guy's name, like Paulo Costa or Costa. I don't know how to pronounce his name. The guy was a freaking meathead. Both of them looked like they hadn't done cardio in forever. They were ripped, shredded guys, like in great shape, just physique-wise, but they were gassed within like 2 minutes of the first round. And so it was kind of a joke. It looked like both these guys have just been doing push-ups and crunches and forgot to kind of like do some of the other cardiovascular type things for endurance during the fight. So a couple of meatheads out there just slugging away, and Costa gets the win. And I don't know if it's Costa or Costa. I apologize for those of you that are diehards that think like, oh, this idiot can't pronounce his last name. I know it's Paulo Costa or Costa, one of the two. Anyway, he wins the decision. And Luke Rockhold, he's 37 years old, and it looked like he was retiring to me. It felt like he was retiring the whole time. And after the fight, it definitely felt like he had retired. But who knows? But anyway, so assuming it's his last fight, and he's losing, it's over. He's lost. His only chance again is also a knockout, much like Leon Edwards in the fight that came after this. But he's down on the ground, and it's the end of the final round, and he knows he can't win. And he somehow manages to slip free and get on top of Costa just enough to take all of this blood that is gushing from his mouth and his nose and just farmer blow blood onto Costa's face, spit blood onto Costa's face, and then smear it around with his face. Just all of his blood just gushing onto his face. It was the most savage thing I've ever seen in any fight. Like pure savagery. It was insane. Just all of his blood out of all the orifices on his face, just onto Costa's face, and then just smeared around face to face. It was truly like barbaric, savage, animal-like, and it was awesome. So, props to him on putting on a great show. Those guys fought really, really hard, and probably as a career for Costa, or not for Costa, but for Rockhold. And glad I could see that final fireworks show that he put on. So that's UFC. Okay, so a little bit about football and basketball, and then wrapping up the podcast in the next few minutes here with this. So NFL preseason is in full swing. I don't have a ton to say about the NFL just yet. I will be talking about it extensively for the next few months. And so I figure we'll save some of that for another week or two. So the regular season starts in like 2 weeks, 2.5. And we'll have a full preview coming up soon, probably on next week's podcast, actually. College football starts in a little over a week, about 10 days. And it's kind of a shame that there isn't a college football true preseason at all. Because even though there's non-conference games that don't count towards conference championships, they do count towards the playoffs. They do count towards rankings. They do count towards pretty much bowl games, pretty much everything that's of real importance. With the exception of the of conference standings and championships, which is also of importance. But everything else, they matter. And it feels like these guys should have at least one game where it just truly doesn't matter, and you're playing another team, and it literally does not matter. It's like it's just so good to kind of get into game mode, get into game shape, just go through those motions. But instead, you get these preseason games or these early season games where it's like two powerhouses going head to head. They're both ranked. And then you realize actually one of them totally sucks. But it goes down as like this top 10 win for the other team. But at the end of the season, that team that was ranked 9th to start the year is nowhere to be seen in the top 25. They have a losing record. They were misranked to start the year. So why not have at least one game that truly doesn't matter at all, then rearrange the rankings, and then go into the season? Because I get you don't really have time for 3-4 preseason games, but there's time for one, and not just the blue and white game or the crimson and whatever game where you play against yourselves. That helps a little bit, but that's not a real preseason game. I want a real preseason game in college to get these rankings right entering the season, the regular season, and then also give them a chance to kind of really get going before the games that matter, that are going to affect their playoff chances, their overall rankings, their bowl chances. All that stuff really matters, and it's all affected by these early season games. And I think it'd be beneficial for everybody if there was at least one true preseason game that was like stricken from the record. That doesn't even count towards any of these stuff. We all start 0-0 after that game. I think it's kind of weird that college doesn't do that, but we'll see how the college season goes. The Big Ten is for sure going to leave the NCAA. College football in general is going to leave the NCAA. This is happening. I could do a whole podcast on that. I'll probably save it for another time. Maybe bring Alan Malai back to talk about it. But I've seen this coming for a while now. I've talked about it for 2 years intermittently. Like, they're going to leave. College football is going to leave the NCAA. The Big Ten is bigger than the NCAA, it feels like, at this point when it comes to college football. The SEC not too far behind them. They're just creating their own rules. It's a business. We've now got NIL deals. It's a business, and they just need to treat it as such. I feel like it's minor league football at this point. So we'll see what happens there. Going to be fun to watch. Last thing I want to talk about is, of course, some NBA talk, some NBA chatter. So LeBron James signed a 2-year, $97.1 million extension with the Lakers. I believe that's the most per season in NBA history. And the LA Times wrote an article about how it was not a win for the Lakers, which I agree with. I don't see them winning another title. He's missed the playoffs 2 out of the 4 years he's been there. Lost in the first round another time. I believe it was the first round. I believe he got swept in the first round. And then the other time, he won the title in the bubble. Oh, sorry, I just fell asleep talking about the bubble. he won the title, quote, the title in the bubble. Come on. Like, he hasn't done much of anything for the Lakers other than he's selling tickets. That's why you pay the man. He sells tickets, butts are in seats, beer's being bought, burgers and hot dogs are being bought, celebrities are there, we're on TV, jerseys are being bought. That's why you do this. That's why you give a guy $97 million extension for 2 years. Okay, so we'll see what the Lakers can do. I don't give them much of a chance. Last thing, I got to wrap up with this. Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, neither one of them has been traded. Neither one. Kyrie opted back in. We thought he'd get traded, or thought maybe he'd opt out. And then Kevin Durant requested a trade, but has not been traded yet. And here we go. We'll see what happens. So both of them remain on the Nets. I think they're probably going to be there for the entire season. And just like that, they're climbing the rankings for the odds to win the NBA title. They're now up to like the ninth team, and I think you're going to continue to see that climb, assuming neither one of them leaves the team, which it looks like right now they probably will not. So, okay, I got to go. I got a meeting to hop into. You guys are awesome. Please hit the subscribe button. I will see you next time. I am out. Peace.
Thanks for hanging with Simply the Best Sports Take. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and check out stbsportstake.com. Simply the best in sports. 'Cause we are